In today's session of Adolescent Psychology, we will study about what is adolescence, meaning and concept, and we will understand the developmental principles and developmental hazards of adolescence. The main objectives of this lesson are to understand what is adolescence, a brief review, and to also understand the developmental tasks of the adolescent stage and the hazards of these development. The term adolescence comes from the Latin word adolescere, that means to grow or to grow to maturity. Maturing involves not only physical but also mental growth. It is a period which fills the gap between childhood and adulthood. Generally, this period is termed as youth, according to A.T. Gerslit. Adolescence, during which boys and girls move from childhood to adulthood mentally, emotionally, socially, and physically. In India, adolescence is a phase that is more difficult to define, particularly in terms of age. The classic age-wise grouping for adolescence is between 11 to 18 years for girls and between 12 to 18 years for boys. Dorothy Rogers has viewed this period as a process of achieving the attitudes and beliefs needed for effective participation in the society. Thus, there is no absolute age limit for a clear-cut boundary between the adolescence and adulthood. In India, the adolescent is a person who has not been sufficiently recognized and encouraged. Due to financial reasons, the adolescent is dependent on his parents for many more years than in the West. The emotional dependence is also as great, producing what is termed delayed adolescence. Adolescence is between 12 to 20 years. A delayed adolescence goes on until 21 and even up to 25 years. They may be divided into three broad stages. Early adolescence. Early adolescence is from 10 to 12 years. The rate of growth increases, starting first in the hands and feet and later in the limbs. In early adolescence, they start initiating independence from the family and desire for privacy. There may be a clash between the wish for their autonomy and parental authority. Middle adolescence. It is from 12 to 16 years. The peak of the height velocity curve is seen in axillary hair and sweat glands development. In 80% of the girls, the dramatic event of menarche occurs. The timing for this is influenced by genetic factors and nutritional status. Any chronic illness can delay puberty. The eruption of the second permanent molar and menarche closely correspond in timing. In middle adolescence, the school and peer groups gain importance. Decisions of vocations and education are made. Physical maturation can influence school performance and aspirations for better achievement because the physical effect of pubertal development becomes incorporated into the self-image. Late adolescence. It is from 16 to 19 years. The body approximates the young adult and development of secondary sex characteristics is completed. In late adolescence, career decisions are finally traced. The child gradually returns to the family on a new footing. Physical growth and development during adolescence have a great impact on the emotional world of a youth. An adolescent boy or a girl gets a newer body having newer ideas and attitudes. The main aspect of their thought is that they pose themselves to be the fittest in the adult world. By the end of adolescence, development has reached a point where the individual is legally and socially regarded as mature and thus capable of living an independent life free from supervision and guidance. Robert Havinghurst. The idea of developmental task is generally credited to the work of Robert Havinghurst, who indicates that the concept was developed through the work in the 1930s and 40s that the developmental task concept occupies middle ground between two opposed theories of education, that the child will develop best if left as free as possible, and the theory of constraint, that the child must learn to become a worthy, responsible adult through restraints imposed by his society. It assumes an active learner interacting with an active social environment. The developmental task concept. From examining the changes in your own lifespan, you can see that critical tasks arise at certain times in our lives. Mastery of these tasks is satisfying and encourages us to go on to new challenges. Difficulty with them slows progress towards future accomplishments and goals. As a mechanism for understanding the changes that occur during the lifespan, Robert Havinghurst in the years 1952, 72 and 82 respectively has identified critical developmental tasks that occur throughout the lifespan. Although our interpretations of these tasks naturally change over the years and with new research findings, Havinghurst's developmental tasks offer lasting testimony to the belief that we continue to develop throughout our lives. Havinghurst uses slightly different age groups, but the basic divisions are quite similar to those we discussed earlier. He identifies 3 sources of developmental tasks. This was given in the year 1972. 1. Tasks that arise from physical maturation. For example, learning to walk, talk and behave acceptably with the opposite sex during adolescence. Adjusting to menopause during middle age. 2. Tasks that form personal sources. For example, those that emerge from maturing personality and take the form of personal values and aspirations, such as learning the necessary skills for job success. 3. Tasks that have their source in the pressures of society. For example, learning to read or learning the role of a responsible citizen. According to our biopsychosocial model, the first source corresponds to the bio part of the model, the second part to the psycho and the third to the social aspect. Havinghurst has identified 6 major age periods. 1. Infancy and early childhood ranging from 0 to 5 years, middle childhood ranging from 6 to 12 years, adolescence ranging from 13 to 18 years, early adulthood ranging from 19 to 29 years, middle adulthood ranging from 30 to 60 years and later adulthood from 61 years and above. The developmental task concept has a long and rich tradition. Its acceptance has been partly due to a recognition of sensitive periods in our lives and partly due to the practical nature of Havinghurst's task. Learning an appropriate sex role helps adults to understand a child's behavior and establish an environment that helps the child to master the tasks. Another good example is that of acquiring personal independence, an important task for the middle childhood period. Youngsters test authority during this phase, and if teachers and parents realize that this is normal, even necessary phase of development, they react differently than if they see it as a personal challenge, such as companionship and emotional support. Other tasks seem to be related to a particular stage in the life cycle. Now, let us further understand the developmental tasks during adolescence. Havinghurst's main assertion is that development is continuous throughout the entire lifespan, occurring in stages where an individual moves from one stage to the next by means of successful resolution. These tasks are typically encountered by most people in the culture where the individual belongs. When people successfully accomplish and master these developmental tasks, they feel pride and satisfaction and consequently earn the approval of their community or society. This success provides a sound foundation which allows them to accomplish developmental tasks that they will encounter at later stages. Professor Robert Havinghurst of the University of Chicago identified 11 developmental tasks associated with the adolescent transition. Each of the Havinghurst tasks can also be seen as elements of the overall sense of self that adolescents carry within them as they move toward and into young adulthood. The first point is, the adolescent must adjust to a new physical sense of self. Puberty is marked by sudden rapid growth in height and weight. Also, the young person experiences the emergence and accentuation of these physical traits that make him or her a boy or girl. 2. The adolescent must adjust to new intellectual abilities. In addition to a sudden spurt in physical growth, adolescents experience a sudden increase in their ability to think about their world. As a normal part of maturity, they are able to think about more things. However, they are also able to conceive of the world with a new level of awareness. Accelerates during the middle stages of adolescence. 3. The adolescent must adjust to increased cognitive demands at school. Adults see high school in a part as a place where adolescents prepare for adult roles and responsibilities, and in a part as preparatory for further education. Since not all adolescents make the intellectual transition at the same rate, demands for abstract thinking prior to achievement of that ability may be frustrating. Point 4. The adolescent must develop expanded verbal skills. As adolescents mature intellectually, as they face increased school demands and as they prepare for adult roles, they must develop new verbal skills to accommodate more complex concepts and tasks. Point 5. The adolescent must develop a personal sense of identity. Prior to adolescence, one's identity is an extension of one's parents. During adolescence, a young person begins to recognize her or his uniqueness and separation from parents. As such, one must restructure the answer to the question. Point 6. The adolescent must establish adult vocational goals. As part of the process of establishing a personal identity, the adolescent must also begin the process of focusing on the question, what do you plan to be when you grow up? Point 7. The adolescent must establish emotional and psychological independence from his or her parents. Childhood is marked by strong dependence on one's parents. Adolescents may yearn to keep that safe, secure, supportive, dependent relationship. Yet, to be an adult implies a sense of independence, of autonomy, of being one's own person. Adolescents may vacillate between their desire for dependence and their need to be independent. In an attempt to assert their need for independence and individuality, adolescents may respond with what appears to be hostility and lack of cooperation. Point 8. The adolescent must develop stable and productive peer relationships. Although peer interaction is not unique to adolescents, peer interaction seems to hit a peak of importance during early and middle adolescence. The degree to which an adolescent is able to make friends and have an accepting peer group is a major indicator of how well the adolescent will successfully adjust in other areas of social and psychological development. Point 9. The adolescent must learn to manage her or his sexuality. With their increased physical and sexual maturity, adolescents need to incorporate into their personal identity a set of attitudes about what it means to be male or female. Point 10. The adolescent must adopt a personal value system. During adolescence, as teens develop increasingly complex knowledge systems, they also adopt an integrated set of values and morals. During the early stages of moral development, parents provide their child with a structured set of rules of what is right and wrong, what is acceptable and unacceptable. Eventually, the adolescent must assess the parents' values as they come into conflict with the values expressed by peers and other segments of society. Point 11. The adolescent must develop increased impulse control and behavioral maturity. In their shift to adulthood, most young people engage in one or more behaviors that place them at physical, social or educational risk. Risky behaviors are sufficiently pervasive among adolescents that risk-taking may be a normal developmental process of adolescence. Risk-taking is particularly evident during early and middle adolescence. At any given time, they may be dealing with several. Further, the certainty of specific developmental tasks varies with early, middle and late periods of the transition. Now, let us discuss about developmental hazards or challenges during adolescence. The period of adolescence usually is an eventful one. However, it poses various challenges for the adolescents and society. Let us understand these challenges. Challenges related to physical development. Physical changes are an essential part of adolescence. While these changes are part of a normal process of maturation, it is a challenging process for the individual, especially when these changes are early. The changes in height, weight, and development of secondary sexual characteristics happen at different ages and variable rates. Bullying by peers and comparison with peers or friends who are developing at a different rate makes them anxious about their appearance. The adolescent may be stressed and there may be a lowering of self-esteem also. Taking poor nutrition may cause poor growth in height and anemia, which is a common problem in adolescents. Challenges related to cognitive development. The adolescents develop a capacity for abstract thinking, discover how to think about relationship issues, discerns new ways of processing information, and learns to think creatively and critically. The adolescents move from concrete thinking to dealing with ideas, concepts, and abstract theories. They become passionately interested in abstract concepts and notions and are able to discern what is real from what is ideal. They understand information and act on that understanding to solve problems, passing through phases of success and failure. The ability to think creatively on one hand helps adolescents to make innovations, getting away from difficult situations, and on the other hand invites trouble due to innovative and potentially risky experiments like rash driving, taking alcohol and drugs, etc. Challenges related to psychosexual development. The adolescent constructs concepts of self within the context of relations with others, yet he is also seeking to establish an independent entity. This journey of self-discovery is both stressful and anxiety-provoking for them. The formation of personal identity and integration with society gives real rise to conflicts. Emotional reactivity and instability makes it difficult for adolescents to control their behavioral response, which at times may be inappropriately extreme, vis-a-vis excitement, anger, sadness, depression, and embarrassment. This often gives rise to feelings of ridicule, humiliation, and embarrassment, and adolescents feel disgusted and ashamed of themselves. The adolescents who belong to underprivileged and minority groups have difficulty in establishing personal identity. The prejudice leads to emotions such as anger and outrage may be directed towards the majority society. Exploration of personal sexuality and sexual identity lead them into serious relationships, heartbreaks, and resulting in stress. Sexual hormones during puberty trigger an increase in sexual arousal, desire, and urge in both males and females. These are managed by each adolescent differently. Challenges related to social development. Adolescents need to find their place in society and gain a sense of fitting in it. This is a process of socialization involving an adolescent's integration with society. This process of socialization enhances the sense of personal identity, and the development of personal identity helps the adolescent to deal with the society's expectations, standards, and norms. This challenge the adolescent takes to make changes in social behavior. Society's expectations pose a challenge for adolescents and are valuable in helping them to progress along the path to adulthood. The fulfillment of these expectations helps to develop a positive sense of self. Adolescents who are overwhelmed by society's expectations may revert to antisocial behavior, ranging from low-level delinquents to serious crimes. Parental expectations to perform and conform to their standards are abnormally high or unrealistic. They may generate negative feelings, communication gap, and antisocial behavior in them. The expectations in relationships with peers, parents, and society are often not fulfilled, and they cause conflicts. Moving away from dependence on parents and family and having close relationships with friends is a major social change. Peers or friends determine the flow of an adolescent's life and develop their personality too. However, negative peer pressure leads to high risk behaviors. Moral and spiritual challenges. The process of social development and the formation of a personal identity go hand in hand with moral and spiritual development. Decision making is difficult based upon the moral teaching, and therefore adolescents often come in confrontation with law and order. Formation of personal identity goes hand in hand in adolescents with finding meaning in their lives. They look within themselves to examine thoughts and feelings and to reason about them. This leads them to seek answers to questions of a spiritual nature. Those adolescents who are struggling with identity formation and are striving to find their place in society may come into conflicts with the social norms and need direction, understanding and empathy. First is the importance of understanding and the interrelationships among the environmental and individual factors that affect adolescent behavior. The familiar cluster of risk factors, dysfunctional family patterns, substance use in the home appears to be associated with each of the risk behaviors, although the precise mechanisms have not been systematically traced. Impulsiveness, difficulty with self-control and sensation-seeking characteristics of all adolescents to some degree, but of some more than others, also seem to be associated with most risk behaviors. Risk behaviors themselves also tend to cluster together. Several participants and discussants noted with young people who experiment with substance use being more likely to engage in risky behavior. However, it is equally important to note that there are significant variations among and between groups of youth, example by culture and ethnicity, in the way risk behaviors cluster and that various risk behaviors have both common and unique correlates. One hypothesis put forward several times was that young people are predisposed by a range of factors to take more risk than others. It is their own combination of traits and the context in which they live that point them towards particular risk behaviors and shape their outcomes. Now let us summarize what we have understood so far. Adolescence is a complex developmental process that varies substantially, both individually and culturally. Over the past 2 decades, advances in the neuroscience have shed new light on this process. Continued work in this area likely will yield great understanding of adolescent development. When adolescent development is successful, the result is a biologically mature individual equipped with a sense of an independent self, the capacity to form close peer and group relationships, and the cognitive and psychological resources to face the challenges of adult life. Although many discussions of development end with the completion of adolescence, the young adult emerging from adolescence is not a finished product. Rather, modern developmental theorists change may not be as rapid and tumultuous in adult life, but young adulthood presents a new set of developmental tasks, such as the capacity to form stable, intimate relationships and the search for a fulfilling career. In the healthy individual, adolescent development sets the stage for the additional growth that lies ahead. Thus, adolescence, by virtue of its nature of change, pose innumerable challenges both for adolescents as well as society. May help to face these challenges up to a great extent. An understanding of the world of adolescence will help the adolescents to pass through the turbulent phase of life and will also help them to make a positive and constructive contribution to make a healthy and harmonious social environment.